Alright, hello. I wanted to make a video about this little project I've been doing for the past couple of weeks because I think it's really interesting. It's been fun, and I plan to do a little bit more with it in the future, and hopefully it'll be helpful to some people, either to do it themselves or maybe it'll provide some useful insights for people. So, basically, what I've been doing is while I was on vacation outside the country, couldn't play the game, but I was thinking about the game and such. So, what I thought of doing was using ChatGPT or AI or whatever AI you might like to help do data analysis on Guilty Gear matches. So, what I would do is whenever I had free time, I enjoyed my vacation, it was a great time. But yeah, just anytime I was just sitting around on my phone, basically, I would watch a replay vulture set from YouTube of like really good players. All of these matches are from very good players, like people who are at least the top 1 through 10 of their respective character, like Red Ditto versus CG Yoshi, Slash on May, Hotashi, Danny, Daru, Sumito, whichever I think it's just Summit. But yeah, very good players and such. Um, so yeah, I would log the matches and sort of like the events of what would happen in the match, when people would burst, what health they would burst at, who broke the wall, was it a super wall break, normal wall break, YRC, whenever they used RC, wild assault, on block, on hit, all of those things. So entering in all those data points chronologically and over time, I've created a pretty big data set with all this stuff. And so right now, I asked it to summarize all the findings and include the total number of games in the rounds just to show you guys how big it is, and then the total number of characters and distinct matchups so that you can see, um, like, I guess the statistical quality of it. It's not like every single game is Potemkin versus some other character, because then that would really skew the data like away from super wall breaks, for example. So there is a lot of different characters and a lot of different matchups and matches that happened. And yeah, I'm going to share some intuitive findings, things that you would think are pretty obvious. And then this is a spoiler alert for one really big counterintuitive thing that I found, which is around burst. I learned a lot about burst through doing this. And I think it's something that I'm going to change with my gameplay, and hopefully it helps other people. So here's a comprehensive summary. It was 58 games logged, 172 rounds, 19 characters, and 31 distinct matchups. So every single number that you see here, even the percentages, take it with a tiny grain of salt. ChatGPT is not perfect. It even says it right here, it can make mistakes, blah, blah, blah. But it's generally correct. Like, there's enough data points that it's not going to hallucinate super duper hard, and it's like a ballpark of every number is pretty close. So 50 plus games, about 150 plus rounds, around 15 to 20 characters, and 30 distinct matchups. So I think that sort of proves the statistical quality in one way, right? And my data input was pretty messy overall, but it was surprisingly good. As I would work with ChatGPT and like tell it like, no, you fucked it up, fix that, and this and that, and then if it was ever unclear on something, I clarify. It was pretty good because I did this over like 2 weeks. This chat is so massive that it lags my browser sometimes. So yeah, so we'll go into the most supported things first. These are the things that are like the strongest sort of like indicators, the things that like are positive indicators. Win round one, 70% of the time. If you win round one, you win the game 70% of the time. First wall break is, if you get the first wall break, you win the game 62% of the time. Successfully burst baiting someone, you win the round 80% of the time. And then RC hit confirm into wall break 70% of the time. And wild assault hit confirm into wall break 2/3 of the time, 66.7. So these are all pretty good indicators. This one was definitely the strongest one. If you win round one, there's such a good reason for you to win the game. And like these make sense, right? It makes sense for these. So a couple of these, I decided to switch them around. I ask more questions later on that are more specific or like the inverse of these. So like first wall break is like a game win rate right here. I asked it what's the round win rate. And then for successful burst fade, this is a round win rate. I asked it what's the game win rate, right? And then I also asked RC on block. Hello, Bandit. RC on block, and then wild assault on block. So then here we go. Lowest value or risky options. These are the other way. The things that lose you the game. Wild assault on block was like extremely, like it just didn't work out. It almost never really worked out for people, or not almost never. It's 36% of the time they won the round, but most of the time that people spent their wild assault on block, it didn't work out. That was something really surprising to find out because you hear so much about how Bandit. What do you want? Come here. My cat is meowing a bunch. Yeah, wild assault on block was just not good, and I think the reason for why RC on block was the same thing. That's in the follow-up questions. Wild assault on block and RC on block, the two things that I learned is that like it's Bandit. What do you want? Come here. Yeah, wild assault on block and RC on block. It just makes sense that they don't really work out that much because if it doesn't work, then even if you RC on block and you get a 50-50, 50% of the time you won't get the hit. So naturally, it's just, and even getting the hit doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win. So then that automatically makes it relatively low. And then the other thing is that it's actually way more impactful than you'd think. So if you RC on block or you wild assault on block and you get the hit and it results in like a good hit and something that's valuable, it's very good for you. Like much more so than I think people make out. It boosts your win rate a bunch, and then or the chance that you're going to win. And then if it doesn't work out, it's a lot more detrimental than I think people like to say, because stuff like this, if you get your 5D RC blocked down here, you lose the round 2 out of 3 times. So it's way more important than I think people think. But then this is the big one. This is the biggest one. This is surprisingly high of 38.5%. For the longest time, this of bursting in round 1 and then you lose round 1, this was the biggest, worst indicator. It was like only like 15 or 20% of the time would you win the game. It was really bad. I suspect this number might not be correct. It should be lower. It was like a magic bullet every single time. Someone would burst round 1, lose the round, and I could fast forward in the YouTube video and they would have lost the game. And there's a lot of reasoning behind this that I think I'm going to get into. I think that that's very valuable for people to learn from this. Midlife defensive burst. So if you're at about 50% health and you burst, you only win the round a third of the time. And then I think I asked in the follow-up questions the game win rate. And then wild assault twice on block in the same round, 30% of the time you win the game. Usually you don't win the game off that, and then maybe you'll win the round, but it usually doesn't work. I think that's maybe in the follow-up questions as well. We'll see. So here's intuitive findings, things that make sense. You win first round 1, you're going to win the game more often. You get the first wall break, you win the game more often. You win the round more often. Burst baiting is strong. Obviously, if you bait someone's burst, they're kind of screwed. And then this one, RC and hit confirm into wall break is a great use of meter. So you have a 70% win rate to win the round. And yeah, that one's just because like if they don't burst it. If they don't burst and the wall break happens and your RC was used to guarantee a wall break, it is a really, really, really good use of your meter. Like conversely, where I said on block, it's really not as great. And then this one's not intuitive, but it's something that I found out. Wild assault is risky on block. Like it's pretty weak on block in terms of like the statistics and how often people win the round or win the game, just because what you do on block has to work out Otherwise, you spent this resource and locked yourself out of burst for next to nothing, which is really bad because burst is just the most important thing by far. All right, here's the counterintuitive things. Bandit, what are you doing? You're ruining this recording. God damn it, Bandit. So most counterintuitive findings. Bursting round one and winning is a 44% game win rate. And not bursting and losing round one is basically the same at 45. So if you fight someone and round one you get hit by something, then you burst and then you steamroll the person and they held on to their burst, you two are nearly equal in terms of the chance to win. In the games of top players that I was watching, winning round one when you used burst but the opponent didn't, it was a toss-up on who would actually win. And it's like really counterintuitive to think about, because most people will tell you, oh yeah, in this matchup, burst really early because you're going to get 2 bursts, or burst to prevent the first wall break because that's like a really bad situation to be in. But the reason why you don't want to do that is explained a bit later in this part, why bursting early round one is not good. But the first part of it is that you're compressing its expected value into a narrow moment. Essentially, you're betting that first hit is the most important hit to burst, when it's usually not. Or like that first interaction that you lose, or that first time you're going to get wall broken, is not where the match is decided. Which is weird to think about, especially when you consider this one of 70% of the time the person who wins round one wins the game. But that's because I think so many people use their burst in round one, trying to win round one, that it ends up being, oh, they're already going to lose because they use their burst instead of holding it. So it might be better or lower of a round one win rate if people are holding their burst more often. Next one is First Blood is nearly neutral. First Blood was basically the first person to get any type of knockdown or like real like confirm into some sort of a combo or some sort of a knockdown, essentially. Doesn't really matter that much. Like, people think, oh, I get touched once, the game's over. At least good players who have good defense, getting touched once, especially at round start, is not the end of the world. And you don't have to like immediately burst every single time. Midlife bursts at 50% perform worse than late bursts. This one was interesting too. Basically, there was a chart at some point that it spit out that was like, the higher your health is that you burst, the lower of a win rate that has, which was so weird to think about. But it's sort of like, this is your own health as well. And this is the idea that like later in a round, you have more potential to swing momentum. The main thing that was being pushed to me is that burst is all about momentum. And if you burst to switch the momentum and you have meter and you have like resources and like the opponent is lower on life and stuff like that, you have a reason that the momentum will actually shift. Whereas if you just burst super early and the opponent's still at full life for full burst, you haven't shifted any momentum at all. There's no reason why you should win that round. And then while assault on block not only fails, it often loses the round. Yeah, this one was crazy to think about. When you think about Soul doing 2 wild assaults on block, cranking the fuck out of your risk, close / far / 5H wild assault, blah, 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 blah. Soul is in there as well. And the Soul player was doing wild assaults on block, and it just doesn't really pan out as much as you would think. Okay, so here it is. Why bursting early round one is often a liability. The two things, I had a theory about it, and I tried to explain the theory, and these are the actual statistical terms for the reasons that I was thinking about, and it backed up what I was thinking, and it made a lot of sense. Maybe it was just glazing me but I think that these two make a lot of sense and sort of explain why it's the case where if you burst round one, you lose. It's just so terrible. And so it's expected value compression. Burst is high expected value resource. It can stop combos and do all this stuff. When you burst early, you force it into a narrow window, hoping for a big swing. And basically that means like there's a timeline of your match. And at some point along that timeline is the most important part of the match, the most decisive part, where, you know, someone's win rate is going to jump up. Like they land some hit that's super important and it turns into, or someone shifts momentum really hard or something like that. And that's going to be the thing that decides the match. And when you think about it, if you think like a moment that's going to make someone's win rate jump up really high, in most cases, they'll probably win the game soon after because of how short Strive games are, right? So if you all of a sudden have a reason, a much bigger reason to win the match, you're probably going to win pretty soon. So then just working backwards, that means that the most important decisive moment to have your burst and negate that like big decision point from happening is probably in the second half of the match. Is not in the first half of the match. So that's something to think about before you burst, you know, first hit whenever you get hit at round start. And then the other thing is sequential probability decay. When you're down a round or low on HP, winning their game requires you win more interactions in a row. The probability of stringing together wins in neutral or on defense or on offense decreases with each required success. So if there's 10 wins or 5 interaction wins that you need to get in a round, and there's 10 interactions total in the round, if there's 10 interactions total and you need to get 5, and let's say it's 50-50, then, you know, you have the 50-50 chance of achieving that. But let's say 2 interactions already happened and the opponent won those. So now you have 8 interactions left in the game, but you need 5 out of the 8. So you have to get a few of them in a row. So now you have to win one 50-50 and then another 50-50. And so like you keep multiplying those probabilities together and it gets lower and lower and lower. And that's why it's hard to make comebacks, because you just have to win interactions in a row. And so when you burst early in round one and still losing, now you face the rest of the game without burst, or a lot of the game without burst, and you end up stuck in this sequential probability decay where you're so far down that the odds of you winning enough interactions in a row is just too low. So then that's when you need your burst to stop this sequential probability decay. And like, you know, you can still win out an interaction without having to have used your burst, and now you've stopped it. But you also need to have your burst to do that sometimes. And if you don't have it because you used it so early, then you could just be facing like worse odds for the rest of the game. So yeah, here were the follow-up questions I asked. Was the round win rate of someone who gets the first wall break? Was the round and game win rate of who breaks the wall second? So if you break the wall second, back on them. What's the game win rate of someone who gets their burst baited? Was the win rate of 5D or RC pressure on block and then 5D RC on hit? This one's surprisingly high. 5D RC is the GOAT. Is it better to hold your burst round one? Why? Is it better to burst in relation to your opponent's health rather than your own? These were things I was thinking as I was learning about the burst stuff. So ask it again, and then yeah. So round win rate, someone who gets the first wall break, 66.2. So 2/3 of the time you win the round if you get the first wall break. Round and game win rate, who breaks the wall second, it's 50% of the time, right? So if you get wall broken, but then you get a wall break back, you've basically made up your like win rate. Like you are mounting your comeback. And that's just really interesting to think about that. It's like maybe the first wall break doesn't matter as much as the second one, something like that. And then game win rate of players who get their burst baited, 26%. You just get cooked. You get so cooked if your burst is baited. 4, win rate of RC pressure on block. RC on block leading to round wins and game wins is below 50%. So it's really not that great. This is basically the statement. Meter investment doesn't always convert into damage or momentum. If you don't make your RC pressure work, then it's not gonna help. 5D RC on hit, 76% and 72% to win the game. It's just so fucking funny. It's like one of the highest. It might be the highest number that's on here, besides like baiting burst. And then, is it better to hold your burst in round 1? Players who hold burst round 1 and lose round 1 win the game 45% of the time. So you have almost a 50-50 chance of winning the game, even if you lost round 1, as long as you held on to your burst. Like, it doesn't make sense, but I can't deny what it's saying. And yeah, the conclusion is basically the higher expected value, right? You are trying to avoid this sequential probability decay and stop it, and you want to make sure that you get a high expected value out of your burst. Is it better to burst in relation to the opponent's health? Burst when opponent has a low or mid health have high success rates, and then bursting when you are low leads to no momentum gain, and that's relative to the opponent, right? So yeah, it's good to, this was my other theory, if you burst in relation to your opponent's health, that's better than your own. So like bursting when someone else is at 50% or 30% health is better than worrying about like stopping yourself from taking a wall break or something like that. Because it makes sense, because if you burst that late into a round, you have your meter, you have some resources, and they are fewer interactions away from losing. So when you burst, that essentially means, because of this sequential probability decay, you're locking in like, okay, this is right now I have to win X number of interactions, and I might have to do it in a row if I don't have the health left over. So if someone else, your opponent, is lower on health, that means you have to win less interactions in a row. So, you know, if you're just getting totally screwed every single round and you're always behind, it doesn't matter when you burst, because you're just going to be, you know, it almost doesn't matter when you burst because you're just losing. You're just continuously losing. But not everybody just gets steamrolled and continuously loses. So that's why it's important to like know that it's like you save your burst for that moment where it's like, okay, now I'm going to lock in that this is the number of interactions I have to win, and having that number be lower is better. And then this is like an example, right? So I'm going to try and wrap up, and I urge anyone who watches this video, feel free to leave a comment of any question you want me to ask this ChatGPT, this specific chat, about the data. Anything you want me to ask, I'll reply to the comment to it with what it gives, or essentially what it's saying. And you can get really specific. So this is an example of one. If someone uses Wild Assault in round 1 and bursts in round 2, what is their game win rate? And I've gotten it down to like such a specific example where it's like, yeah, there's only like 6 rounds where this happened. So it's pretty good. It is pretty good at like recognizing the exact scenarios, as long as you ask it the right way. And so this one was 64% of the time they won the game where they did that. And then it was saying the strategic insight is basically you use Wild Assault round 1 to give you the early advantage, and then round 2 to deny the opponent from gaining momentum, which I think makes sense. So yeah, I think moving forward, I want to try and do this with my own games and see if I can like increase the value of my bursts. I have another chat or another part of this chat where I was asking it about like how to increase the value of your burst, or like what is the best time to burst, and like how do you know that you're not just gonna let yourself get steamrolled by delaying your burst and other things like that. And yeah, I came up with like a point system. So if anyone's interested in seeing that, just let me know. Hit me up on Discord or just ask in the comments, something like that. Oh, excuse me, my nose is very stuffed. Got a little sick on my trip. And yeah, just let me know. And hope you guys have a good one.